So the thing is now, if in tadlees it does sound dodgy, if any of these people are doing mu'an'an riwayat, that riwayat is a problem. It's problematized straight away. That they say we need affirmation that this chain is connected. Although some people may try it still. Like let's say you've got a hadith which is in your favor for something and you say, oh, here it is. Now the other person will say, there's a mudallis in that. This guy's a mudallis, I ain't going to accept it until you bring me another chain proving that he heard it from him. So, which one? If the mudallis is doing mu'an'an, unless it can be proven, then it is problematized here. Then it would fall under the categories of rejected. Unless somebody can prove. The thing is this, how do you prove? You see, the mudallisin are slightly sly as well, because they don't just do it with anybody. They often do this with people where it was possible that they actually could have met them. And they don't always do it with themselves, they do it further up in the chain as well. So it's not just about, did I hear it from him? I might not have a problem with him, he might be a sound narrator. The problem might be further up in the chain. So if all of a sudden I think, here's Doc, I think, I don't know about Doc's transmission, let's just say. Doc's busy at work and doing all this stuff. There we've got Abu Faris ibn Sha'ban. So we're thinking, okay, we'll take his riwayah. But now, Doc, we don't know, might get problematized. Now I might lose strength in this hadith. But I know Maz, although Maz, did he really take from Abu Faris? We say, generally he didn't. Like I don't know that he did, but he was a contemporary. So is it possible that he took from him? It's possible. Therefore I just drop him in the middle, right? And I just say an fulan, because the person studying the chain may not know. Like when they study chains, how do they know who connected? How do they know who took from who? Like how do they know there's a connected chain? So they will know one of the simple ways, and one of the main steps which most people do, is they just say that as long as there is the plausibility of liqa, of meeting, of luqya. So you have to say that, look, how can we know that these two could have met? First of all, we look at when they died. There was an overlap. Then we look at where they were. So imagine they were in the same town, in the same part of the world, then it's very possible. Or even if they weren't, imagine he was in Mecca and he was over here. But then we realize, but he traveled on 5 occasions to Mecca. So it's plausible. Khalas. Most muhaddithin stop there. That means it's connected. Because with the possibility. Imam Bukhari tried to take it a step further by saying, no, that they in some point or another has to have transmitted something directly from that person. Even though this one might not be.
How do they know it's not though? Like in that situation we just explained.
Yeah.
How do you know that he, for example, he skipped him out?
Yeah, because what they will do, this is the thing. You see, for people like you and me, we wouldn't have a clue, obviously. We'd just be like, they'll be running rings around us. But what would happen is people who've memorized chains and chains and chains. Remember when I said the muhaddithin, to them a chain is a different hadith with one name different. So now, let's say this same chain, I'm transmitting from me, from Mazari, from Abu Faris, or transmitting something. Now along comes Ibn Asim al-Gharnati from Granada and starts transmitting from me, but then he gets another narration, the same one, which is going through him, but it's mentioning him and then him. So he thinks, wait a minute, this content is the same as what I transmitted. That means really there was a person in the middle here. And the person was this person. So now that will be brought out that, wait a minute, so who did the tadlees? So they will look at the different riwayat, but it might be that I'm even known, for example, as a mudallis, that maybe I've done it somewhere else. So they know that, we caught this guy out somewhere else, so he's a mudallis. So generally, when they don't know, when we don't know, imagine we don't know who a mudallis is, they just go by the plausibility of them having met for it to be connected. Imam Bukhari went a step further and said the plausibility is not enough. There has to be proof that some point in their life they met. So even though not in this hadith, but in another hadith, he has to actually say, I heard him say this. A different hadith, so we know they actually met. Okay, so that's tadlees. Now tadlees, what we're talking about is tadlees in isnad. Tadleesul isnad, tadlees in the chain, where you're covering up the chain. The other tadlees, which is a lighter version, is known as tadleesul shuyukh. What is that talking about?
Blocking the teacher.
Yeah, not necessarily blocking or like, not necessarily dropping, because that would be dropping the chain then, because you're dropping the chain. It would be like this. I say, I'm transmitting from Fahad, let's say, a hadith. Now I feel, the moment I say, on the authority of Fahad, people will go, what the hell? Fahad, I ain't taking that. Him. What does he know? So people might say this. So all of a sudden, I make it obscure. I say, on the authority of Abu Muawiyah al-Maliki.
Change his name.
But I use a name that he actually, I don't make up his name, like I use a name of his, but he's not known by it. So I just go like, yeah, on the, usually kunyas or things like this, or title that he's not known by. So let's say, like for example, the author here is known as Sirajuddin. He's known as Abu Hafs, the author. He's known as Ibn al-Mulaqin, and his actual name was, I believe, Umar ibn Ali, wasn't it? His actual name was Umar, just don't want to mix up, yeah, it was Umar ibn Ali. So imagine I now say, oh, on the authority of Umar ibn Ali, al-Misri, who is from Egypt. Now you don't know who Umar ibn Ali is. So you go, oh, okay, I haven't heard of him, but okay, fine. So obscurity in the names. And the reason why people would do this is to lend authenticity, or not to lend, but to cover up any weakness. Because it might be, why do you think, okay, what, because you've got obviously a big question mark, the Ricardo, you've got a big question mark there. What is the, what are you about to ask?
Just, it seems like, why they...
Why would you do that?
Yeah, like, in other words, if it's not strong...
Good question.
Why would you use the
I think since most of us here are Pakistani, we're going to understand why we would do these type of things. As you can see, there's no question mark on any of their faces. They're all like, like normal. Oh yeah, that one. They're like that. But okay, go on then. Why might they do this, guys? Why might the transmitters be doing this? Because think about it. By making him obscure, it's not like he's known, so he might be questioned anyway. So why do that though?
I don't know for sure that it's definitely not acceptable. Because it might not be.
Exactly. And if you are a bit of a powerhouse yourself, that people think, oh, but you don't normally transmit from weak people. But you really want to get this one riwayah in to prove your point. And this one is, you feel it is reliable, although this person has been questioned in other areas. And you think by me mentioning his name now, all of a sudden, my whole argument's going to go down the drain, even though I know, like I feel certain, that he was genuine and he was accurate in this point. So I feel, let's say I think, you know what, I don't care what people say about Fahad. I know that on this point, Fahad knew what he was talking about. But by me saying that, people are going to just go, they're going to drop my whole argument. And they're going to say, nah, we're not going to take it if you say him, we're not going to take it. But because I'm a bit of an authority in this, let's say, if I was. So now if I make him obscure and say, oh, Abu Muawiyah al-Maliki, and people don't know who the hell that is. So, but then they're thinking, well, oh, but because I'm a sound person and I'm always usually transmitting from sound people. So it allows it to get pushed through and it allows it to make the argument. It's a bit weird, I know.
It just seems a bit
Ricky.
weak, doesn't it?
It is, yeah, it's
Your motive is to prove the point rather than
exactly.
evidence.
But sometimes, you see, can it not be that somebody who isn't always into something, but he is solid on 1 or 2 points? It can be, yeah. Like, let's say somebody isn't into hadith, or he makes mistakes, but you know on this point he got it right. Now you are right because you know he got this one right. But the thing is, the other people won't let you get it through because of his name. And you're thinking that's a bit unfair because I know on this point, Doc came through. At this point, he was solid, he knew the transmission. But the people are saying, he made a mistake in that transmission, he made a mistake in that transmission. And you're trying to say, nah, but listen, I'm only transmitting the stuff I know he was solid in. But people won't take it from you like that because it's not about trust, it's about objectivity. So you've got to bypass these people at the gates.
It happens the other way as well, doesn't it? Like, say, sometimes normally a person is not considered as authority, but because you've used him, so normally he wouldn't. But because you've used him, he all of a sudden becomes...
Oh, but that's, now you're talking about something else. You're talking about how do we authenticate people and give them a certain status of... about Malik. How do you give somebody a status of being what they call ta'deel, of being certified? That's a different... We'll come to that actually. So, do you get my point?
Yeah, I understand.
But some people have used it, misused it. Some people have genuinely used it because they felt it isn't right.
How often does this happen? Yeah, that's what I was wondering.
Oh, give us the stats. What's the...
About 3.5%.
3.5%? Yeah.
No, but is it something that's quite like, for example, like it's quite prevalent, or is it like just you know?
I mean, following the recession, it kind of went. Right. This is, right.
They're weak hadith, right?
I can't remember. I was just speaking to somebody today, right? And the person goes, actually, it's being recorded. I won't go too much into it, but the person said, like something completely, to do with the Islamic Council, and somebody said, yeah, but you know, I suppose you know about the Ed Miliband argument, and that's the thing exactly in my case. I didn't even know what I was talking about. I said, the Ed Miliband argument? What are you talking about? I got no idea. But anyway, I don't know what he thought I was following. But so the point is, how often does it go on?
Like, is it admissible? Like, we got things we do based on hadiths that have got these people being.
Okay, the thing is, these have been checked and verified, and then, but they have been problematized. Like since I brought up Parliament now, right? The way you will have somebody, and then you'll have a shadow, and they're kind of always there to critique them and put them in there. So in our science, in our deen, in these sciences, there's always the other, whether they're madhabs or whatever, they serve a purpose in always cross-checking people. Because, for whatever objective, but when people put forward a hadith, the other people will be there to always kind of have the critique on it, to say, well, really, what's going on here then? They're just trying to prove their point. This is where, in the Muwatta as well, and we'll see this later on when we, inshallah, come to studying the Muwatta, that Imam Malik sometimes says and transmits from people on some where he doesn't name them. Like, he misses people in the chain, that's understandable, because it was very early on at that time, people miss people. But then there's where he doesn't miss the person, just doesn't name him. Where he says, وَأَرْوِي عَمَّنْ لَا أَتَّهِمُهُ فِي دِينِهِ, and he says, and I transmit on whom I have no doubt about his religion. And he will say things like, وَأَرْوِي عَنْ ثِقَةٍ, and I transmit from a person who is of trustworthy source. But why is he saying that and not saying his name?
Is it because the name was a problem?
Because
Imam Malik was, where was he from?
Ironically, he wasn't from that part of the subcontinent, but he was a guidance for us. Imam Malik was saying don't worry about it, man. Imam Malik was, why would he say that? Why wouldn't he just say his name? Because Imam Malik is an authority.
And he's very scrupulous in who he narrates.
Exactly.
So
Imam Malik is, you see, this is the key point, what Doc has just said here. You see, Imam Malik, when he's walking with some students this one time, he walks past in the Masjid al-Nabawi, and a person is sitting there saying, Haddathana, what, you know what Haddathana is? Or am I just telling you? I just going, what's Haddathana?
literally he spoke to
When people are saying Haddathana, they're talking about hadith usually, saying this person transmitted to me, this person transmitted to me. So when people would say Haddath, people would write and everything, document the hadith, Haddathana, people are going on. So Imam Malik walked past and he said to somebody, he said, I've seen many people sit at these pillars in the Masjid al-Nabawi, ويقول, and he's saying, حدثنا فلان وفلان. And he says, and I did not take from him a single hadith. Not even one. Imam Malik says, hashtag attitude. This is Imam, and he says, and it's not, he says, وَلَوْ اِعْتُمِنَا بِبَيْتِ الْمَالِ. He says, وَلَوْ اِعْتُمِنَا بِبَيْتِ الْمَالِ لَكَانَ بِهِ أَمِينًا. He said, just to correct you, because you're probably thinking, oh, that guy was probably a scam artist, or the guy was this. He says, the person, if you gave them the whole treasury, Muslim treasury, he would have been to the penny, been sound in it. Not, so trustworthy. The person was like that. Yet I never took a single hadith from him. There's one of those ones.
Confusion.
He goes, غَيْرَ أَنَّهُ لَمْ يَكُنْ مِنْ أَهْلِ هَذَا الشَّأْنِ. He says it's not that the person was wrong, it's just that he wasn't from this field. He says he wasn't one of us. Allah. Like he wasn't of the science of hadith. The person wasn't of it. So this shows the this type of the scrupulousness that you're saying, that the whole, the probity and the way Imam Malik was so strict about trying to, pick ruwat and to discard them or to do. But yet, why would he not mention a name?
Maybe he knows that on that particular masala that the guy is, you know what you were saying before, that guy is, he definitely knows it, but if he narrates the name, it's going to be an issue.
See, this is it. One of the people that they believe in some of those, because this comes in a few places, one of them, a popular one, is Abdullah ibn Lahi'a, who the people say we can't accept his hadith. Although Abdullah ibn Lahi'a, who was from Egypt and was one of the first qadis of Egypt and stuff like this, a major scholar, the problem with him was at a later stage in his life, his books got burnt. And he lost his books, and I think his memory also slightly at a later stage. But they say before that happened, he was actually solid and sound. The problem is, how do you differentiate between what was before and after? So some people can. Yes, they've got a whole, this isn't about Abdullah ibn Lahi'a, but the point is that there's some people say that the four abadila that transmit from him are fine, anything through them, through other than them, it is. But the point is, when Imam Malik is saying, I transmit from a trustworthy person, that so-and-so said this, that so-and-so said this, and leaves his name out. It's because he knows deep down that this riwayah that I'm about to say is sound. I don't want this riwayah to be thrown out the window just because of people's politics and people's dynamics in saying, him, how do I know he's legit? How do I know he's this? So let's not make it about him, because I know this one is legit. Obviously, the Muwatta has had its whole, the whole thing has been connected by later muhaddithin anyway, but the point is that this was Imam Malik's perspective of looking at things. And that was tadlees.
It's pretty similar to like the two types of tadlees.
The two types of tadlees, go on, what are the two?
I was going to ask, one is tadlees shuyukh,
The first one being tadleesul
hadith,
Isnad. And what was the first one? Huh? What was the first one? That was the first one. Okay.
If they narrate it mu'annan, then you can't
Yeah, but what is tadlees? It's where they
miss the narrator.
where they drop a narrator with plausible grounds that the narrator before and after may have met to mislead, which gives an assumption that it's a connected chain. Whereas if the person before and after have never met, then there's no point dropping him, he'll just become a munqati hadith. Where there's plausibility that the chain is connected, it looks connected, but it's actually not connected. That's a tadlis al-isnad. That's the stronger and more discouraged tadlis. The other tadlis is known as tadlis al-shuyukh, where, what do?
You obscure the person.
You obscure the person for whatever reason. It may be that, that you feel that it'll just become about him and therefore be criticized. It may be multiple reasons. These both tadlis, by the way, where Imam Malik said anith thiqa, that's not considered tadlis.
Yeah.
Tadlis is where there's an attempt to cover up. Where that's just considered by people, that will be they'll say that's munqati because he just hasn't named anyone.
Yeah. So he's just saying, I know he's alright. So
He's just said from a person who I trust.
Yeah.
Now, the Shafi'iyya, for example, would say, who's this person? Well, we can't accept it because we don't know who he is. That's not the same as Imam Malik trying to change his name and cover it up. He's not doing that. If he did that, that would be tadlis. So tadlis al-shuyukh is less of an issue, but it's still an issue. It's not a good thing anyway. Because it's obviously still a sneaky attempt, isn't it? Obviously the isnad is much more problematic because you've actually dropped an entire person. At least here somebody might know who he is. They might say, Abu Muawiyah, of course, seen that guy on Facebook, I know who he is. But the point is, if you completely drop him, then it becomes much more difficult to crack. Are we summing up? Or are we carrying on? What are we doing?
How much more we done?
It's been what?
1 hour 40 minutes.
40.
How many technicals the text do? Or is it another lesson?
Should I just try it? No.
We'll finish at half an hour. Let's go for it.
Has he got space on there? He got space on there. Go on then.
By the way, is it a week then? Is it week?
No, mu'an'an by itself, is it weak?
Yeah.
Is it?
No.
What has the
It's possibly week, but
mu'an?
Matruk, you said rejected.
No, mu'an'an at face value is what?
Oh no, it's muttasil, it's connected.
Is connected.
Unless the person is a known mudallis.
Unless there is a known mudallis in the chain. So it is given it is at face value, it is musnad and connected and muttasil. Oh, sorry, it doesn't have to be musnad, but muttasil, it's connected. Shadh. الشاذ وهو ما روى الثقة مخالفا لرواية الناس. That is what a trustworthy person transmits, but his riwayah contradicts the riwayat of everybody else there. What does shadh mean? No, nowadays, what does it mean? No, homosexual. Nowadays, it's used like that. But anyway, huh? Okay. Right. That's where they kind of get it from. But the thing is, so in shadh linguistically means odd, hence queer, like odd. This is why they still use it for that today linguistically. But here it is if a trustworthy person is transmitting. Okay, he's transmitting something, but it goes against what is the more sound riwayah. Okay, and they also mention وهو الخروج عن القائل أو الخروج عما عليه الناس. Okay, وحكمه mention وإنما الحجة بمقابله وهو المحفوظ وحكم فهو حديث مقبول. Right, okay, now the shuzuz can happen in the chain or in the content. And you get this sometimes. So for example, let's say, I don't know if they've mentioned an example here, that let's say there's let's say 5 people are transmitting a hadith from Ibn Shihab al-Zuhri. Now 4 of them all transmit something. Let's say as an example, they all transmit that he went into a place and, I don't know, like that you go to a place and you pray rak'atayn. And one person transmits, or when you go to a place you do not pray rak'atayn. So one person has contradicted many, and they're all going through the same person. So you can quite easily detect, okay, that the problem is coming from him because it's shad, it's going against. But he in himself is a reliable person, but this hadith no longer becomes reliable. This is from the category of whether you want to call it mardud, or I suppose from that angle da'if, but it's from the rejected categories, like it's not valid to act upon because it contradicts the more sound riwayat.
In the matan, can it also be shad if it's just strange? Say like for example the text is contradicting the Quran or is contradicting the basic principles that are thabit. Can it be rejected on that, or can that come under that category?
Yeah, I suppose you're right. It can if there's if the hadith. The example I gave you was where multiple people are transmitting something. If there was, imagine there wasn't multiple people transmitting, it was just a transmission, but it goes against something which is clearly known, and there's different riwayat about this thing being established, then in that case, yes, it would still be considered shadh and like unacceptable. Like there'll be a problem with it. But generally, this is how shadh works. This is how it generally, like mostly they don't appear like that they totally contradict Islam, for example, like a hadith. But they do get hadith that will be shadh like this, that one person has transmitted something, which in itself sounds fine. Like he might say, and this is where they speak about the riwayah of, like, for example, wiping over the socks and stuff like this. Is it shadh because the other riwayat that are all transmitted from the same person mention the khuf and stuff like this? So this is the debate.
And can a shad hadith be classed as tadlees?
Can I what?
Can a shad hadith be classed as tadlees? If, for example, if it contradicts.
How so?
I mean, say, I don't know, like I heard, obviously, there might be fabrication in there, or adding stuff to
Okay, mashallah. Okay. I'll get it. I mean, you were probably preempting the question to the answer that would have been asked next lesson. Right, mashallah. No, I mean, it wouldn't be tadlees, because tadlees is where you either drop somebody in the chain or you cover up somebody, like obscure the chain in the names. It's not. Shadh is where the people are sound, the chain is fine.
Okay.
It's just that one person who's okay by himself is transmitting. There's a group of people transmitting something. One of the group transmits the opposite. So we've got a problem now. Whereas, let's say 4 people are saying one thing, this one guy is saying, he's from the same group, but he's saying the opposite thing. So somebody's got it wrong, and it's very likely just him, since the other 4 or 5 have got it right.
But it's not opposite, it's just like extra.
Okay, that's different. That they haven't actually gone into. That's called ziyadatu thiqa, is usually acceptable. Where if ziyadatu thiqa maqbula in the muhaddithin, usually it's acceptable if, imagine everybody here transmits something and one person transmits the same, but he goes extra as well. So he says, so imagine everybody here transmitted a dua, and then one person transmits the same dua, but in the end he adds 2 words extra. But he says something like, and then, you can say subhanallah. So I'm just saying there's something like, now the thing is that one point of his I don't know if it contradicts, but it kind of clashes with the other transmissions. But because if he's a reliable source, that is usually acceptable by people. Although some people may question it, they may say, nah, we don't want to go with it, but it's...
What about the dua, like they shorten it though, instead of adding, just make it?
No, I mean, I'm trying to give you an example, not to get caught up on the example of the dua. Like, I'm just trying to give you an example of adding stuff. I'm not talking about abridging. You can abridge stuff, but I'm talking about how does ziyadatu thiqa occur. So like I say, like it could be that we're describing something. It doesn't have to be a dua. That was just something to make it easy for you to understand. Obviously it didn't work. But let's say if I said like, okay.
The narration of that, like Al Sayyid, that the Prophet ﷺ, detested purchasing of dogs or cats or whatever, except for the hunting dog. That one narration in the
Yeah,
mentioned.
right. Okay, yeah, like that. I suppose that's a good example. That the Prophet like he told people off, don't, for example, not to purchase, let's say, dogs or such and such or these creatures. But then they transmit that. But one person transmits that and then says, but he said unless it's for hunting purposes. Now he added like he's got an extra pot. The other people haven't got that pot. The question now is that really a contradiction? People have to look at it. Some muhaddithin might say, yes, we don't care, we're going to stick with this. Then the other thing is, if he himself is a reliable transmitter, then why not accept it? Usually people will accept it. If he is reliable and it doesn't contradict the main essence of what was being transmitted. Obviously, if the ending part said, and everything before this was just false, then no. So obviously it's got to be like not contradictory to it. And it's got to be from a reliable source. I don't know if that example added more. I'm going to run out of examples. Okay, so the munkar is ما تفرد به واحد غير متقن ولا مشعور بالحفظ. Munkar is like shad, but munkar is where the person himself is not a solid or reliable narrator. He's a weak person as it is, or a questionable person at best as it is, and then he decides to go against the majority. Right, so not only is he weak, but he decides to contradict a whole group of people. Okay, fard. We did fard actually in the last lesson. وهو ما تفرد به واحد عن جميع الرواة أو جهة خاصة كقولهم تفرد به أهل مكة. Fard, and we did say this last time as well, that they do say this two times, fard mutlaq, and that's the hadith that one person takes from so many, or fard al-muqayyad, and that's known as in the example that such and such a people, this hadith became restricted to these people. Fard, I mean, it's not, hadith being fard doesn't mean it's weak or anything like that necessarily, okay? It's just, okay, it can be another layer of analysis that's applied to it. That, okay, it's fard. Like that, like, they do that. Because what it's saying, is that, look, let's say there's loads of people transmitting. Now, all of a sudden, like, I don't know, let's say Imam Malik now is transmitting from there's a group of people, they were transmitting this, but Imam Malik is the sole transmitter onwards. Like, nobody else transmits this beyond him except him. From him, maybe many people do it again. But in that one layer of the chain, there's only one person, even though there may have been many before and many after. So that's known as fard. It doesn't necessarily make it weak, but it just raises that, that type of like, what's going on here? Like it's just a layer of analysis, that's all. Gharib, right, this is something strange, odd. وَهُ مَا تَفَرَّدَ بِهِ واحد. He just jumped straight into the examples Ibn Mulaqin does. عن الزهري وشبهه ممن يجمع حديثه فإن انفرد اثنان أو ثلاثة سمي غريبا فإن رواه جماعة سمي مشهورا ومنهم. Okay, gharib, once again, we did this last lesson as well. We went into quite some depth from the other book as well. That it's something strange. They say it can be in the chain or in the content, and that is where one person continues this, brings forward this chain or this hadith. Now,
Sorry, what was that?
so let me actually, this will be where you might get a whole set of people transmitting from, let's just say, one person, and it begins with like just one sahabi, and they give the example, what is it, إنما الأعمال بالنيات and stuff like that. But so as he says here as an example, الغريب سندا فقط وذلك بأن يكون الحديث معروفا برواية جماعة من الصحابة والغريب إما يكون ضعيفا أو صحيحا وقد يكون في المتن والسند. And Ahmed ibn Hanbal kind of spoke against it. Now, it can be, like I said, that let's say there's only one Sahabi, like Umar ibn al-Khattab is the only Sahabi who transmits إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. Even though from him many people may later on start transmitting this hadith, later on down the chain, but it has a gharaba in it. Being gharib like that, coming through a chain, like coming through just one person, especially at the beginning as an example, does not make it weak necessarily, okay? It's just a layer of analysis, that's all it is. He says from this is mutawatir, which is khabru jama'atin yufidu bi nafsi al-ilm bi sidqin. This is something we covered at quite some length in the last lesson. Something that is transmitted by so many people that it becomes impossible to kind of discredit really. That's mutawatir. And we did say that some people gave it numbers, other people didn't. And we did go into the different types that there's, it could be the ma'nawi, it could be something that is semantic, it could be in terms of its like symbolic tawatur, or it could be actual, and we spoke about the problems and the contentions if it was actual. Can it happen or can't it happen? Right, we questioned some of that. Right, okay. Mustafid وهو ما زاد رواته في كل مرتبة على ثلاثة. This once again is a category. It's saying what is above mashhur. Mashhur was like at least 3 people in each are transmitting from three like that. And mustafid is more than that, like 4, 5. For mutawatir, some people had said as minimum as 5, but usually they said 10, 20, 40, whatever. Just grab the, yeah. So that was mustafid. Mu'allal وهو ما اطلع فيه على علة قادحة في صحته مع السلامة عنها ظاهرا. Now this is a hadith, as I explained last time. It has an illa, it has a defect which may be in the chain or maybe in the actual in the matan, in the content, but it's usually not so apparent to the untrained eye. It's usually experts who can tell. And I gave the example like in the Malikiya with like prohibited, let's say, birds of prey or predatory type of beasts and animals, and the permissibility of eating them, even though the hadith is sahih, with the tafarrud being from a particular people. So stuff like, but the illah can be anything. It doesn't have to be, it can be in the chain as well. That you can question, like maybe there's something which other people don't realize, but you kind of picked up on, wait a minute, this seems very unlikely. But it's usually what mu'allal means, a hadith that is problematic, but it's due to a defect that is not so apparent to the untrained eye. Muttarab. Okay, this is وهو ما يروى على أوجه مختلفة متساوية. The muttarab hadith is something that is transmitted by multiple transmissions which are contradictory but yet equal. So they're all saying like weird things which in some way are kind of, you're thinking, well, which is the accurate one? They're not they're not outright contradictions. They can be, but they're not outright in the sense that one saying yes and the other saying no. But it could be that they're not making sense. Like, so for example, some people have actually tried to say that maybe the hadiths with tayammum are maybe to some extent muttarab, that they feel that, where does the tayammum go to? And one transmission saying this and one saying this, and and the whole thing, it's not. But let me give you an example that the Malikiya have used. They've said regarding the hadith of qullatayn, which the Shafi'iyya have used for water, once it reaches qullatayn, it lam yahmil khabathan. They've said that this hadith is muttarab because what are the qullatayn? Qulla is a measurement, but the measurement of who? In one hadith, in one transmission, they say qilalu hajar, from these people of Hajar, from their barrels or whatever it is, their weight, their scales. But in another one it says something else. And so it's like, so this doesn't, to them it doesn't make sense, because if you've got uncertainty in this, so they've seen it as muttarab. So muttarab hadith is usually rejected and seen as not from the acceptable category. Mudraj وهو زيادة تقع في المتن ونحوه. Mudraj is where there has been, what's the word? Interpolation, where you kind of like add some, no, where you add in something, but it can be done unintentionally. So it can be done mistakenly, but it can also be intentional. So if it's intentional, a person, the ulama say of hadith, that if somebody intentionally tried to add to hadith, they would have lost their adala. They probably, you know, their reliability really of hadith would have gone, their justness. But what idraj, mudraj, some people may add. So as an example, like I give an example, there's a hadith which is considered, people say it's fabricated in, or weak at the, if not fabricated, it's in Ibn Majah, that it's on, I mean, I've forgotten the authority of who it is, but it's there that man tala qiyamuhu bil-layl hasuna wajhuhu bin-nahar, that whoever's standing in prayer is elongated during the night, his face is enlightened during the day. Now, the people say, so one of the answers given to that was that this was never meant to be a hadith, and it was misunderstood by the transmitters who later transmitted it as a hadith. The Rawi at the time was sitting in the majlis narrating hadith. Qala Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, Qala Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, saying the chain, Qala Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And then he reached the chain where he reached it and said, Qala Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And along came one of his students who had like this whole glow to him. So the Shaykh looked at him and said, Man tala qiyamuhu bil-layl hasuna wajhuhu bin-nahar. So the people around him, some people thought, oh, that's the hadith. But he was saying, oh, look at, you could tell that he must pray at night because his face is all enlightened during the day. So that's an example, although that's not a good example of idraj, but that's how sometimes like there are mix-ups in understanding what is a hadith, and when they've been later checked, they've been critiqued. Idraj commonly is found where people have, sometimes the companions have tried to explain what is meant, and the person listening thinks that's part of the hadith as well. So things like that, okay, that's generally mudraj. موضوع وهو المختلق المصنوع وقد يلقب بالمردود والمتروك والباطل والمفسد. Okay, that's got some nice names there. That got like a 64 hit combo right there. Obviously, موضوع is a completely fabricated hadith, and it's obviously haram to transmit موضوع hadith, especially as a hadith, unless you were saying this is a موضوع hadith. Now, and that's even if you're trying to tell somebody some good things. Even if you've got good intention, you're not allowed to transmit fabricated hadith, because the Prophet said, Man ta'ammada alayya muta'ammidan falyatabawwa maq'adahu min an-nar. Whoever lies upon me, then he might as well prepare his abode in the hellfire, even if it's with good intention. So some of the people who were later asked, who were known for their fabrications, when they were later asked, they said, oh, we saw so many people were getting attracted to the fiqh of Abu Hanifa, so we start making up hadith in the virtues of the Quran to re-attract them. But, your intention may be good, but that's not permissible. I mean, you can't. In fact, most hadith to do with the virtues of the Quran are not sound. Most hadith are not. In fact, the outright bulk of hadith to do with the virtues, fada'il al-Quran, are actually not sound. That they were made up by people. A lot of them may be either very weak or weak, because people were trying to encourage people to study the Quran, so the intentions were good, but it's not. And that's why you end up getting some fanciful, illustrious type of like, you do this and this and this, you read this and all these type of fanciful things, because it doesn't sound like a hadith either.
They think it's totally haram. What if say it generally fits the pattern? You know, some people have said that hadith that ikhtilaf in my ummah is a rahmah. It's like totally. Some people say it's mawdu, but some people narrate it because they say it's generally.
Was it
Like
Abu
usually
Mazari that said? No, who said it's mawdu?
some have. I don't know exactly the name.
Oh, okay.
So I was reading
Because
Albani's criticism on it, and he
Okay, because I thought, no, I don't think Albani said it's mawdu. I think they said it was da'if. Da'if is not mawdu, by the way. Da'if is
Ibn Hazm, he said this hadith is fabricated because
ikhtilaf ummati.
because he's saying that ikhtilaf is a like a bala because it will
Yeah.
all confuse. So that
Maybe, I mean, you see, by one person saying, generally when a hadith is considered mawdu',
But even that Jihad al-Nafs, Jihad al-Akbar, like some Ibn Taymiyyah says mawdu and other people, then he said, you know, whatever. But
yeah,
it's generally-
you're right. If there is a disagreement and you happen to, it will then come back to, I suppose, what you're following. If you're following that you believe it's da'if, really, there are many ulama that believe da'if hadith cannot be transmitted at all. They, even for virtues. Amongst them were people like Imam Bukhari, Imam Muslim, Yahya ibn Ma'in. You had people like Al-Jawzaqani. You had people like Abu Bakr ibn al-Arabi from the Malikiyah. Yeah, Ibn Hazm, Imam Shawkani, Ibn Sayyid al-Nas. You had these people who felt, in my understanding as well, this is my personal understanding, that if a hadith, if I know it to be weak, generally I don't believe that people should teach it even for virtue.
is that because there's enough in the sound?
Because I feel that what's in the deen that is soundly established, you know, feel kifaya, that it suffices. We don't need to rely on weak cobwebs. You can't build mansions on cobwebs, can you? Like, you gotta kind of we don't need such weakness when the deen is built upon firm foundations. I know when I say that, that's a minority of people, by the way. The majority, as Ibn Hajar explains, they do allow you to quote da'if in virtues, provided it doesn't go against something soundly established, it falls under general principles, and they quote the rules and conditions for doing so. Okay, so mawdu', obviously you're not allowed to transmit at all. Obviously this is, if it's known, some people are a bit extreme in their classification of what's mawdu'. So Ibn al-Jawzi is known to be like that. So in his mawdu'at, sometimes he's put hadith in there that ain't mawdu'. I don't know about them, but they definitely, sometimes ulama have said they're not mawdu'. Even so, some people, I think some people have criticized Darqutni as well for his being harsh on certain things, and so the ulama have a temperament when they critique something. Maqloob is when a hadith, when the chain is reversed. Maqloob means upside down, and so it might be that I'm supposed to say, an Abdullah and Zayd, but I end up saying an Zayd and Abdullah. So people can tell that. And that can be in the text as well, by the way. It can be in the text that I mix up this is why people said about the hadith that do not go to sujood like a camel.
Yeah.
Let your hands proceed. That Malikiyah are generally the only ones who tend to do that as the hadith explains. The other madhabs refuse to accept it, and they say the hadith is maqloob. They say that there's because they say, but a camel does go with his hands down first, and
But isn't that because the camel doesn't have legs or something?
exactly. So some of the people said, yeah, but that's how. So they've explained it like that. And the Malikiyah do go by the apparent of the hadith. They go with their hands first, like they don't go with their legs. Like they don't drop to the knees first. The hands touch the ground and they go into sujood. But the other madhabs, Shafi'iyya, the Hanafiyya, although they accept the hadith, but they say the hadith is maqloob because it contradicts itself. So that's an example.
The Hanabila, they accept that.
I think the Hanabila do, and generally the Salafiyya do as well. They do it like that as well, like the Malikiyah. Al-Ali is obviously something like a high, and it's of different types. It can be in the chain, etc. وَهُوَ فَضِيلَةٌ مَرْغُوبٌ فِيهَا. It's obviously a an encouraged virtue. وتحصل بالقرب من النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم ومن أحد الأئمة في الحديث وبتقديم وفاة الراوي بالسماع. So obviously these are the different you can al-ali hadith is the closer it is to the Prophet صلى الله عليه وسلم, the more ali it is. Okay, the more of a higher quality the hadith is, as in obviously if there's less people in the chain, then it's more of a greater quality. One nazil is the opposite of ali. It's of a lesser, it's farther away. Okay. مصحف مصحف وهو تغيير لفظ أو معنى تارة يقع في المتن وتارة في الإسناد وفيه تصانيف. مصحف is where you mix up. So it's a mistake, where you get a mistake really, and it could be that you've mixed up the name. You're supposed to say, I don't know, Amr, but it says Umar, and so stuff like this. So you've mixed them up. مختلف وهو أن يأتي حديثان متعارضان في المعنى ظاهرا فيوفق بينهما يرجح أحدهما. The مختلف is, now this can be as well, and they're going to talk about this in a moment in the chain as well, but here he's just mentioning in the text, he's saying where مختلف الحديث, he's trying to just say where the matan is almost contradictory, but it's two different hadith, and how do you kind of combine between the two? So the scholars will kind of do tawfiq, they call it tawfiq usually between the two. That's a matter of interpretation, and it'll come in the isnad as well, and we'll speak about that in a minute. It comes in the isnad. Like what you see when two hadith contradict, what a person can do is you can either do tarjih, where you prefer one hadith over the other, or you can do jama' baynahuma, and some people call it tawfiq or tatbiq, that you kind of like
Talfiq or
tawfiq, like you kind of just, they can call it tawfiq, like you're kind of just making them both, you're kind of trying to make an agreement between the two, you're trying to come out with an interpretation. So that happens quite a bit actually. So people try,
that's what they do.
yeah, what is the rule? Should you first of all try to kind of do tawfiq and tatbiq between the two, or should you try and do tarjih? Like that's a principle, like if two contradictory hadith come to, is the main principle we first of all just give one preference over the other, or are we meant to be trying to make them both be at work? There's both angles have been critiqued, right? So one side could say, look, by giving one preference you're neglecting the other hadith. The other position could be critiqued by saying by using both of them you're not actually using any of them, because you've come out with a new position. So I'm just saying it from a philosophical perspective. Then you have مسلسل وهو ما تتابع الرجال إسناده على صفة أو حالة وقل فيه الصحيح وقل فيه الصحيح, sorry. And that is what مسلسل is, a hadith that has been transmitted in particular styles or things, and it can be, for example, the first hadith you teach. So the Sahabi says, this was the first hadith I learned from the Prophet ﷺ, then he taught it to us, the first hadith, and that's musalsal bil awwaliya. Then there's like musalsal with hosting people as guests, with the aswadain, with the, you can have with the dates and water. But the thing is, they call the two black, even though it's really just the dates, but that's min bab al-taghlib in Arabic. But musalsal, there's many types. Some people say that, with the handshake, with the smile, but most musalsalat are not actually authentic, but they've just carried on as a barakah thing. People have carried them on. Right now, والاعتبار وهو أن يروي حماد بن سلمة مثلا حديثا لا يتابع عليه عن أيوب عن ابن سيرين عن أبي هريرة. He mentions here, the thing Ibn Mulaqin does sometimes, he just jumps into the definition but with an example. He says وهو تتبع طرف الحديث من الجوامع والمسانيد والأجزاء ليعلم هل هو متابع شاهد أم هو حديث فرد أي انفرد بروايته. I'tibar is really just analyzing the hadith to understand its status. Is it, we're finding out what is this hadith? Is it of a primary level? Is it a secondary follow-up, backup hadith, or what? المتابعة أن يرويه عن أيوب عن حماد وهي المتابعة التامة. Mutaba'a is like a backup hadith. So I'm transmitting something and you're thinking, well, I don't know, he's okay, but he's not like a solid transmitter. But then somebody transmits something else as well who may just be okay as well. But the fact that he's transmitting, following me up, spot on, like he might follow it from my sheikh spot on, that it makes you think, okay, it gives it more strength then, because it's been followed up. So some hadiths are considered in that layer of follow-ups, like mutaba'ah, secondary. So they're not on their own, people wouldn't really go to that transmitter, but they'll use him as a secondary source to add strength. Shahid. أن يروي حديثا آخر بمعناه وزيادة الثقات والجمهور على قبولها. A shahid, and this is also what this means, the shahid, is that I transmit something, let's say, and it might be questioned, so somebody brings a different narration in support of that narration, and that's called a shahid, like a witness to, so it adds strength and it's obviously acceptable. المزيد في متصل الأسانيد. Okay. So this is if a person all of a sudden brings something extra in the chain. They call it mazid, just means extra. Sifatul rawi, these are just explaining some terms. The sifa, the characteristic qualities of the narrator is that he is just, he is precise, and ويدخل فيه معرفة الجرح والتعديل, and he has been critiqued or assessed is the better word. So the scholars of hadith will verify him, they will vouch for him, or they will critique him. And when they critique him, they're raw. They're not like there's no holds barred in when they just rinse people when it comes to criticize. They'll say that he hardly, when it comes to hadith, he doesn't know anything. Even though they'll say he's a great guy, got great personality though. But when it comes to hadith, they'll say he doesn't know anything, or he probably knows one or two and do not write from him. And they speak about them very bluntly, even though these are very popular ulama. Bayanu sin as-sama'. This is something which ulama have written about. What is the age from which a person could be a valid transmitter of hadith? And there's been a huge difference. He here says he feels maybe at the age of 5. Some people have said 10. Some people have said 20. Some people have said no, just at an age where you have, they use the term tamyiz in Arabic, which is actually quite, I believe, similar to the, I know there's a difference in the medical and legal, doc's gone now, but the age of distinction where people can distinguish between things and they have discernment. That is the debate. So people, they can transmit, and people have written books in that explaining that. So when can a person become generally they would say he should at least be able to read and write and stuff like that. Well, kitabatul hadith, there is ijma, people say, or an agreement, it's unanimous that it is permissible to write hadith. What are the different ways in which hadith can be transmitted? People say there's 8 ways that it can be, obviously through hearing it, reading it, ijaza, giving permission, and ijaza is in different ways. It can be in this way, like the 4th way, munawala, you hand something to somebody, as in this is here, I'm giving you ijaza. You write to them, they could be away somewhere, I'm writing to you, I'll give you ijaza in this. I'lam, I make an announcement that about everybody in this institute has been given ijazah, as an example, or this place. Wasiyah, a person could kind of give it as a, bequeath it, or say as a, they could kind of say this, whether it's, sometimes people do as a, before they die, or sometimes just in general with their counsel, like they say, I give ijazah to this person or these people. Wijada, that you find it, that you just find a book of hadith and you start transmitting from it, like pick up Bukhari and start doing it because you've got it now. That's the least of all the categories.
Does that come under ijazah?
No, but that comes under the transmission.
Oh, so you can just do that?
Yeah, but that's the weakest
Yeah, but
of
it's-
so people
you
are
can do it then.
no, that's how a lot of people, otherwise people who are picking up Bukhari and saying this hadith is in Bukhari, most people don't have ijazah for it.
Yes, so but you're allowed to do that.
Yeah, I mean it's not, yeah, you are allowed. So like most people that go read, let's say, a book of hadith, or they read the Quran, for example, like most people that, okay, especially hadith, people that are reading them, most people do not have like, many of there are ulama that do have ijazat and asanid, but many people don't as well. So they just read it and study it and read the commentaries and then teach it to people.
Does it matter if you're just transmitting something everybody agrees is okay? Like say like from the book like Sahih Muslim or something
Yes.
like that. Then it's agreed all you're doing is repeating what's in
So
there.
this is the thing, and so it's wijada. Obviously, there's a difference between just because you're transmitting, it doesn't mean you have diraya, you have a comprehension of the hadith.
Yeah.
So that's a different thing. Then there's something which is known as the different things of like all the how hadith are documented sometimes. Who transmitted from, so for example they'll say man lam yarwi anhu illa wahid min as-sahaba faman ba'dahum. They mention man urifa asma'ihi or man urifa bi asma' or nu'ut muta'addid. So for example, people have written books on narrators who are known by multiple names, narrators who are known by strange alqab, like titles. They've written things like narrators who are known by kunyas, Abu Bakr, Abu this, Abu that, lists of them. And then there's things like al-mukhtalaf wal-mu'talaf wal-muttafaq wal-muftaraq. And that is things like al-mu'talaf means what is harmonious, and mukhtalaf is different. So this is one thing. Al-mu'talaf wal-mukhtalaf wal-mukhtalaf. So harmonious yet different. So similar but different. And that will be things like where the name looks similar but it's different. Like let's say Bazaz, Bazar. So without one dot, you could mix that up. Let's say Bazar, Nazar. Like one dot could make a difference of a name there. So it looks similar, but it's different. Then there's Muttafaq wal Muftaraq. So Muttafaq is agreed and Muftaraq is different. So it is spot on identical, yet absolutely different. So let's say the name Al-Khalil ibn Ahmad. So there's going to be like 5 narrators with this name. One of them might be Sahih, the other one might be absolutely weak. So although you're reading the name Al-Khalil ibn Ahmad, but there's books dedicated to this. All the Muttafaq wal Muftaraq people and stuff like this. Then he mentions the Sifatul Rawi. He says وتدخل فيها الرواية بالمعنى واختصار الحديث وآداب المحدث وطالب الحديث ومعرفة غريبه واللغة. And we explained this. Were you just asking about abridging hadith and stuff like this? And that comes in the sifa of the riwayah, the description of the riwayah. People do sometimes interpret by meaning. Sometimes they transmit with an abridgment. People do that, and there is a debate all over over the topic and whether it's permissible or what and stuff like this. So certain hadith in Bukhari are abridged as an example. Right now, he then jumps into, he says, وَعَزْوَ لِلصَّحَابَةِ وِفَاقًا وَخِلَافًا يَحْتَاجُ. He says, he quickly decides to touch up very briefly on the ahkam of the Sharia, saying that, what are the rulings. He mentions the 5, that people should have knowledge of these, that what is wajib, nadb, recommended, tahrim, haram, and makruh, karaha, discouraged, and ibaha, permissible. What is attached to them? He says al-khas, and something khas is something that is specific. Okay, it's to do with one meaning, one person is specific. Am is something that is general and covers people. Generally, so if we said, I don't know, like people, that's just am, covering everybody. Say all of you, anyone, each one, like it's, so these are just covering each and all, whatever this is covering. Mutlaq is a word that is actually they say is unrestricted. Mutlaq is usually, it falls under the category of khas, but it will be unrestricted. So it won't be like, so for example, it's like we're using a particular, let's say we were to say a Muslim, or better still, let's say you're to specify a person. It could be of a particular race, or it could be a particular, let's say somebody said a Pakistani person. Now, in a way, that is specified, yet it's unrestricted as well, in a way, because it could be anybody of that category. Whereas you could now say between the ages of 30 to 35. Now you've restricted it. So sometimes when you get a description, the description does specify, but it can still be unrestricted. So this is, so you get things which, so this is generally known as mutlaq. So you will get, that's when we're talking about things or people and stuff like this. You can get commands as well that are mutlaq. That you just, for example, you're being told fast. You're just being told mutlaqan, just fast. But you're not being told when. Later on, you get what is the muqayyad, the qaid to it, the restriction, saying, oh, fast from dawn till dusk, like this, till sunrise, till sunset. So you're getting the instructions, the restrictions later on. Okay? So, mufassal, that's something that is clearly, it's explanatory, self-explanatory. Mufassal, self-explanatory. Mufassar, something that has been explained. Mujmal, that which requires explanation. He then goes on to show that there's several things in studying hadith, in knowing the abrogated and the abrogating, the nasikh wal mansukh, knowing things like the Sahaba and those who came after them, knowing things. There's books written about those who transmit, those who are the elders who transmit from the youngsters. So there's actually books written on people who, like collections of all those who are older but transmitting from people who are younger. So you would think it's the other way around. Why might that be important? Because
You get the chain the wrong way around.
yeah, exactly, because you might think that's maqlub. You might think, oh no, this guy's older, he is like 80 years old and that guy's only 20. This must be the other way around. But it's not, because there's certain people who transmitted like that. There's he mentions there's transmissions of people who are better from who are less in virtue. So like the Prophet ﷺ transmitting from Tamim al-Dari, the hadith of the Dajjal as an example, and other things as well. There's also transmissions of the Shaykh from his student. And there's books written on this. So sometimes, generally the student might be transmitting from the Shaykh, but this Shaykh also transmitted from his student as well. Just as Nafi', for example, Imam Malik transmits from him, but he also transmits something from Malik. Like so this does, do you understand? So it does happen. And they mention here كرواية الزهري ويحيى بن سعيد وربيعة عن Malik. All these people transmit from Malik as well, although they are Malik's teachers.
Can there be a transmission from a non-Muslim?
For hadith? No. Right, so وَرِوَايَةُ النَّظِيرِ عَنِ النَّظِيرِ. So the thing is, where you've got equals transmitting, like Sufyan al-Thawri, Abu Hanifa, transmitting from each other, or transmitting from Malik. Although, is that equal from equal? No, that's, but the hadith al-ayyim أحق بنفسها من وليها, that the woman who doesn't have a husband, that she is, it's permitted for her to get married, and the whole thing about, you can take their permission and so on and so forth. But this hadith has been transmitted by Sufyan al-Thawri and Abu Hanifa from Imam Malik as well. There's the transmission of fathers from their children. Aba anil abna. So the books in this are important because people might mix them up. Think, oh, this is maqlub. So it takes a master of the science to know that it's not. There's ma'rifatul mudabbaj. Those are hadith which are like equals, transmitting from equals. Ma'rifatul ikhwa wal akhawat. Obviously family. they'll say things like the mutashabih. There's things written in the mutashabih where things may be confusing sometimes to somebody. Like, so as an example, people who are accidentally quite often, people who didn't carry their own surname quite often. So some people have kind of gathered those narrators just because to other people who've checked it up might have said, yeah, but he wasn't the son of this person, so this guy made a mistake in the chain. But it may have just been that he was popular like that he wasn't with his, like some people, they've become popular with like Ibn al-Mulaqin as an example. That's not his dad. Although he just become popular, but that's an example. There's other confusing elements like books written on like to clarify confusion in the mutashabih. Like let's say the Sahabi Abu Mas'ud al-Badri. Now the thing is, he never actually participated in Badr. People might say, somebody's made a mistake here. But so like this, there's a whole science, like a fun skill dedicated to it. Then in things just generally on who are reliable authors, there's been books written, who are weak authors, stuff like that, narrators. There's been books written on man ihtaraqat kutubuhu, whose books got burnt, or dhahabat, or he lost his books, or who lost his memory, and stuff like this, and all of this type of stuff, and people who transmitted from other people then forgot. They transmitted to other people then forgot. So the transmission says that rawa anni, that he transmits from me that I said this.
So he's redone it.
Because he can't remember doing it, but the other person is sound. So Mazari says that I said, that this person said this, that the Prophet said this, but I don't remember hearing that, but he's saying I said it and he's a reliable person.
Is that like because they get old or something?
It could be, and it's interesting, and so
That does happen, though. You do forget.
they say sometimes haddatha anni. And this I remember when we were doing Abu Dawood and going through Abu Dawood, and the teacher said, the problem with he said the problem with taking hadith without a teacher, because what would happen in this chain, they would say haddatha anni, meaning I don't remember it, but haddatha anni wa huwa thiqa, but he's a reliable person, that I said this, that he said this, that he said this. So he said somebody was teaching the book, hadith book, but without teachers, and he said he's doing it with tajweed, with super tajweed, right, ultra tajweed. Nobody, and he's reading it. He reading it, and he says haddatha anni. It says anni. Yeah, so he's saying anni, anni. So he's thinking, what is this anni? And so you see, unna or inna in Arabic, like the word innin, means an impotent person. So the word, the noun like inna unna can mean impotence. So he thinks this is related to that. So haddatha inniyun, like that. So an impotent person is transmitting wa huwa thiqa, but it's okay because he's still trustworthy. So this was this somebody had no idea what the hell he's doing. But so with that you can see all these type of books have been written. He finishes and then he says فرغت من تحرير هذه التذكرة في نحو ساعتين من يوم الجمعة. He mentions from the 27th of Jamad al-Ula in the year 63 and 700 Hijri, and أحسن الله بعضها وما بعدها في خير آمين. That, may Allah accept. With that we finish, although, was it 2 hours?
2.5.
So unfortunately we weren't at his speed, but I suppose we've got our own reasons. So barakallahu feekum, jazakumullah al-khair. So with that, any quick questions? No? So okay, wa subhanallah wa ta'ala amma yasifun, wa salatu wa salam ala afdalil qa'ilil mamnoon, al-madinatu khairul lakum in kuntum ta'alamun. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh.